I'm talking right now with a young woman who was involved with a radio ad that has been aired by Robert Myers opposing the reelection of Judge Jeffrey Langton. The ad has caused quite a bit of stir in Ravalli County and also initiated a call from the Ravalli County Attorney and the Ravalli County Sheriff to KGVO News asking for an opportunity to basically state their opinions about the ad, that it, as far as the tenor and the content being unprecedented in anything that's happened before in their memory in Ravalli County politics. So I guess, first of all, I understand you are the woman who is mentioned in the ad. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So if you could just very briefly describe the situation that occurred that is being described in the ad.
Okay. In 2012, as you know, Judge Langton had violated the MCA 40-2-211 without a legal authority, acting upon a parenting petition that was submitted by my father. And there was, nothing before that, ever, no investigation, nothing. And I'm headed to my children's Christmas program only to find out that my kids were seized illegally. At the time, I had no idea.
Now, where were you when you heard this?
I was living in Shelby, Montana.
Okay, and why were your children in Hamilton?
Oh, they were not in Hamilton. They were living with me in Shelby.
Oh, they were. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Okay, so go ahead, please.
Yeah, they were in Shelby. They were not in Ravalli County at the time.
Okay, and how was it that they were able to? Did the authorities in Shelby come and get your children and take them back to Hamilton, or what?
I was just called down to the police department, and I was handed a big stack of papers, and they told me that my children, that they were gone, and they were on their way to Ravalli County.
Okay, and were you given a reason why this occurred?
There was a big stack of papers of just being accused of all kinds of stuff from my parent, my mother, my stepmother, and my father. Being that drug use, abusive, stuff like that. Nothing that there was no truth to that.
Had you ever been accused or convicted of any of those crimes in the past?
No, I have not.
Okay. And so all this, I'm assuming this all came as a complete shock. What did you do at that point?
At that point, I was in tears at the sheriff's department. And I went home, and I called, I think, every lawyer from Ravalli County to Toole County. Anything from in between between us. I was 285 miles away from Ravalli County.
Okay. So how do you feel Judge Langton wronged you in this particular case?
I feel that he took it upon himself. He violated the law, and just kind of he took one side and went with it. And I don't think he was very fair. Right. There was no warning, no investigation, no nothing prior to me. It was just, here's some paperwork, I got your kids, and that's that.
And how long did it take you to get your children back, or have you yet?
I've got my children back May of last year.
And so how long was the time period when you were without your children?
Over about 2 years, 2.5 years.
Okay. And what happened during that 2.5 years?
I went to court, and I fought my butt off. The Department of Family Services from Toole County that actually used to work here in Ravalli County, he was one of my main witnesses in the case. And yet, my children were still handed to mother. And so I didn't know what to do. At the time, I had no money even for this lawyer that I got. Okay. Yeah. So, in those 2 years, it was tough. After losing custody of my children, I wasn't able to talk to my kids ever.
Okay.
And it was a very rough patch.
All right. Now, I understand that you are very upset with the the county attorney and the sheriff in Ravalli County. Why is that?
Well, for one, when Mr. Myers and I had made this ad, we made sure, and he made sure to detail the ad, to spare my daughter, anything, so nobody could pinpoint who it was. And the thing that upset me is they made sure to say, oh, this was her grandfather who did this, by the way. So, this case was pretty big. It's been as far as the UK. So if anybody that, knows, they can say, oh, I know who that little girl is.
Okay. All right.
And then for them to blame me was a really, I was horrified.
All right. And I guess the other question I wanted to ask you, and I asked you this off before we began taping this recording, was that why is all this coming out now, just a couple of days before an election, rather than 2 years ago when it first occurred?
Honestly, I didn't know where to go with it after losing my children. I wanted to pursue more. I didn't have no money. And then I just was looking on Facebook, and I started talking with Mr. Myers, and he's been great. He gave me an opportunity to tell my story, where I haven't at all.
All right. And so what do you hope is the outcome of all this that has happened up until today?
The outcome, I just hope that, people can be aware that the corruption and the judges doesn't take time to pay attention to anything. It just kind of does what he wants, jurisdiction, illegal, anything. So I'm hoping that we can get a different judge in there that will actually pay attention and have a care for somebody, for anybody.
Okay, I got it. All right. Thank you. Right. Let me restart this. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, were there specific things that you wanted to point out?
I did. I wanted to point out, I wasn't sure if it was all Fulbright or Hoffman that said, I'm the one that could have protected them, and that I did let my children still live with my parents. That I will say I did. I was at the believing that my father had changed, and everybody had told me he went to counseling, so I gave it a chance. Because I didn't grow up with my father. So that's one thing I want to pinpoint. Yes, that was my fault. But as soon as I heard of physical abuse, I called DFS and Ravalli County Sheriff down here, and none of them would do anything. So I do want to confirm that. But I do want to confirm that, it wasn't just my fault of why my children were taken from me. And even when the fact when my daughter was knowingly pregnant and everybody in the county, including DFS, knew that my daughter's story didn't add up, nobody would do anything. I had to physically come down, break my order, and steal my children away from my father. And if I could give any shout out to, Officer Albright and Potter, they were just great.
And those were folks from the Ravalli County Sheriff's Office?
Correct.
Okay.
They were, the awesomest detectives I could have ever had.
We're talking with Judge Jeffrey Langton, and Judge Langton, this has been an extraordinary election season, I know, especially for you, and with the ads that have been leveled against you. KGVO had an opportunity to visit with a woman who was evidently the woman who voiced the most recent ad that is promoting your opponent, Mr. Myers, for the judgeship there, talking about what happened with the woman's daughter and the parenting plan that she accuses you of violating Montana Code annotated 40-2-211 and 1-1-125 as regards taking her child away or giving parental rights, I guess, to a relative. So if you could share that from your perspective, sir.
Well, I guess briefly, it was a case where the grandfather of the child and his wife had filed a parenting action, and they stated in their petition that these children had lived, that their them long enough that they had developed a parental interest, which is something that's recognized in Montana law. And they requested that there be a parenting plan placing the children with them. And they made out a case that looked like it might have some merit, and so I proceeded. Now, I can say, to the best of my recollection, that neither the mother nor her attorney, and she did have an attorney, ever voiced any objection to the venue being here in Hamilton. And so it continued here, and there was evidence concerning the children here because they lived here so long with their grandparents.
Now, was there any sort of a hint that something really tragic would happen to this family due to the placing of the child in this situation?
Well, I can tell you this. I've seen one version of what Mr. Myers is putting out there that claims that the mother told me at the hearing on the petition that her father had somehow molested her, and I can tell you that she never stated that at the hearing that we had. There was only, as I recall, some very passing evidence that at some point in the past, the Child Protective Services had received some sort of a tip that he might be having some kind of sexual contact with his granddaughter. They dispatched a social worker who determined that the girl denied that had occurred. He denied it occurred, and they found it to be unsubstantiated and closed the case. And that was it. The first time I found out from the mother, or anybody else for that matter, that this man had some history of sexual misconduct was after he had committed the offense. He'd been arrested, tried, convicted, and was awaiting sentencing. That's when I first found out about it. So I don't know what's motivating the mother to make these statements, but about what happened at the hearing. But I can just tell you that part's just flat out false. The transcript is everything in the hearing was, of course, recorded, and transcripts can be produced. I can tell you that her attorney never claimed that his client had been abused by her father. He submitted proposed findings at the end of the hearing. There was nothing like that in there.
And one question I did ask her is to why all this wasn't brought up long ago, as opposed to...
She never appealed. There was no...
I guess the question I asked her was why all this came up now, just a couple of days before an election was to take place. And basically it was just, she said she needed to get the information out.
Well,
so
I'm sure there's a little bit more to it than that, but it'll probably take some time to figure out what it is. But, Mr. Myers has been out there trying to dredge up whatever, vile rumors that he can, and then he gives them legs and throws them out there as fact. And this is just the most recent. He has a track record of being dishonest, and this is just the most recent manifestation. Now, I don't know what's motivating this woman, but that's the way it is.
Now, do you have compassion on her for the situation that her family found itself in?
Well, I have compassion and empathy for everybody, and she'd had a difficult life, and I know she'd been with a lot of difficult situations in her life, and that's why she left the children with her parents as much as she did. I guess one question is, how am I supposed to believe, or have any reason to believe, that her father's a danger if she voluntarily left her children with her father for months at a time? What sense would that make?
Surely. All right. Well, Judge, I've taken up enough of your time. Thank you so very much, and I appreciate you taking the time to visit with me.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to, once again, try to set the record straight.